Hi everyone, this is Dr. Juliet Singler and welcome to week 8 of History of Rock and Roll. Well, this week we're talking about more than Motown, soul in the 60s. And I also want to ease you into your assignment for this week. What I've asked you to do is to think about soul and the influence of soul on the civil rights movement and participate in a discussion question that's related to that. I also want you to share your research topic with me and describe the kinds of resources that you're being able to find. We're going to talk in the assignment about primary resources, and I want you to be looking for primary resources for that assignment. Well, let's talk first about an artist named Wilson Pickett. And Wilson Pickett was not with Motown Records. He was a Detroit-based singer, born in 1941, and he died in 2006, who was signed by Atlantic Records. Jerry Wexler of Atlantic Records, who was a white guy, right? But he was a guy who loved black music in the US, and he wanted to get these great soul artists out to the public. So Jerry Wexler wanted to record him, and they were going to record the song in the midnight hour. And Wexler had seen people dancing this dance in the New York clubs that had a delayed backbeat. So the backbeat, if you remember, is beat 2 and 4 of the meter. So if you think of this as the beat, then you can come early in the beat, right on the beat, or at the end of the beat. And they recorded in the midnight hour with that delayed backbeat. And it became the heart of the Southern soul sound, which you're going to hear in almost all the songs we listen to today that are part of that same era.
I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. That's when my love comes tumbling down. I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour when there's no one else around. I'm gonna take you, girl, and hold you and do all the things I told you in the midnight hour. Yes, I am. Oh, yes, I am. One more thing I just want to say.
So of course, that was Wilson Pickett singing in the midnight hour, and maybe you could detect that do, do, 2, 4, those kind of delayed backbeats. It's a little hard to detect, honestly. I'm a professional musician. I can barely pick it out myself. But what it sounds like to me is that they sort of start into the beat and crescendo as they go through the last part of the beat. So that's that delayed backbeat that's part of the Southern soul sound. Well, Wilson Pickett was certainly a very influential artist. In the Midnight Hour was one of his greatest songs, but I want you also listen to Land of a Thousand Dances, because when we talk about those crazy dances of the 60s, this song mentions almost all of them. And I won't play it now, but listen to it on your own time. You're going to see, if you were dancing to this in a club, you would have had about 2 seconds to dance each different move that he talks about in the song. Let's move on to Aretha Franklin. And we have talked about Aretha, but it bears more discussion. We haven't really talked about the song Respect in particular. She was born in 1942 and died in 2018, and she was known as the Queen of Soul. She was a Detroit-based singer as well, but she didn't sign with Motown, which, as you know, was out of Detroit. She signed instead with Atlantic Records, a company out of New York, and they positioned her as more of a jazz singer. It really wasn't her best um, gift. She was terrific, but she needed to get more of that gospel sound and find her roots, and she was able to do that eventually. So if you watch the movie Respect, you're going to enjoy it, first of all, and you'll learn a lot about Aretha Franklin's backstory. She was touring already and making money as a singer, but she had not scored a hit. So she got interested in this song by Otis Redding called Respect. And Atlantic Records took her to Muscle Shoals, Alabama to record it in a studio full of white musicians who were just well versed in a lot of different styles country, obviously, Muscle Shoals, Alabama's in the South, but also in gospel and soul music. And that was where Aretha grew up. She was born in Memphis, and then her father migrated to Detroit. Her father was a minister, so she grew up singing in the church. And when she started collaborating with these musicians, it was like magic. She also said, I want to bring my sisters in as my backup singers. And they had been singing together for their whole lives. So that was another stroke of genius there. And they created a hit. It didn't happen quite in Muscle Shoals. Her husband at the time actually had a conflict with one of the musicians there. And so they stopped the recording session. They took the recording session back up to New York and completed, I believe they completed Respect up there, but it was with those musicians from the Muscle Shoals group that she scored a hit. So I want to show you this brief video about the making of Respect. It's a little hard to get it on the screen, but you can hear it.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Respect. Probably Aretha Franklin's most well-known song. It's an anthem for civil rights, feminism, and, well, for all people who just want a little bit of respect. But the song wasn't written that way. It was written in 1965 by Otis Redding, the seminal soul artist famous for Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay and Try a Little Tenderness. Redding's version tells the story of a man asking for respect from his wife, really a code word for sex, in exchange for his hard work and salary.
All I'm asking for is respect when I come home. Hey,
Franklin's version flips the script.
hey, little girl, you are sweet as a honey, and I'm about to give you all of my money. And I'm asking at the time, honey, to give me my breakfast when you get home.
She's a black woman asking for recognition, and she doesn't speak in code. She spells it out.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T, kind of what it means to me.
It was Aretha's idea to spell out respect, giving the song its most iconic lyric. She also reconstructs Redding's original song by changing lyrics and adding her sisters as backup vocalists. Franklin and her sisters Carolyn Ann and Irma came up with the idea to add the "Sock It To Me" line. In 1999, she told WHYY's Fresh Air, "It was non-sexual. It was just a cliche line, something that people used in the neighborhood. So it means something like, let me have it. Sock it to me." The song was released in April 1967 when Franklin was just 24 years old. Respect soared to #1 on the charts, pushing out the Young Rascals' Groovin'. America was no longer groovin'. It was in the throes of revolution. The Vietnam War and its backlash, the second wave feminist movement, and racial unrest in dozens of American cities, including Detroit, where Franklin grew up and learned to sing spirituals and gospel. Just a few years earlier, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, or sex. It also included the Title VII provision that made it illegal for private employers, government agencies, and unions to discriminate based on sex, building on the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And even though she didn't intend to write a political song, Respect became a civil rights anthem on the level of Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come," a song she also covered on the same breakthrough album, "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You." Respect was also an affirmation for feminists who were fighting for recognition that a woman's work is worth as much as a man's, even if it's unpaid domestic labor, and even if society doesn't recognize it with equal pay. Franklin won 2 Grammys for Respect, and went on to record 17 top 10 Billboard hits, and become known as the Queen of Soul. When she became the first woman to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987, the committee called Respect her greatest triumph.
So I want to credit the Washington Post for that lovely video that we were able to watch. And you can hear the differences between Otis Redding's version and her. They highlighted some of them. She brings her sisters into it. That when they get to the part where they go re re re, the movie Respect brings out that that was Aretha Franklin's nickname that they were saying. I just thought that they were saying the first two letters of respect, but they're actually also saying Aretha Franklin's own nickname. And then also the great thing is that she is taking the script and flipping it, talking about how women deserve respect. Let's talk about James Brown. We have talked about James Brown, but there's a lot to his career because he was around for a very long time. He was born in 1933 and died in 2006, and he was performing for most of those years. So we can see in his career this shift from doo-wop to soul and to the verge of funk. And I want to point out that at the beginning of the 60s, funk means something different than it comes to mean in the late 60s, early 70s. Funk in the early 60s is synonymous with soul music, but in the late 60s, early 70s, it means something particularly musical, and it has to do with the bass line, part of that delayed backbeat feel as well. So in the early part of his career, James Brown was creating songs like Please, Please, Please from 1956. I think you remember this song. I'm not going to show it to you, but he has his backup singers performing as his doo-wop vocalist, and he's heartbroken in this song, and he keeps staggering off stage, and they bring him back on, and they put a cape on him, and he goes into a fit singing and screaming, and throws his cape down and goes off stage. His singers bring him back. And there's really not much to the song, but there's a lot to James Brown's showmanship in the song. Well, it's a totally different feel from the song Papa's Got a Brand New Bag from 1965. Please, Please, Please was 1956. Papa's Got a Brand New Bag was 1965. And it shows how his group is coming right to the verge of funk in its sound. By this time, James Brown has become a terrific band leader, and he's really created a tight ensemble. And in fact, he was known as for being kind of a strong taskmaster on the road. If someone played a wrong note, sometimes they were kicked out of the band. Here's part of Papa's Got a Brand New Bag.
That new breed ain't no drag. Papa's got a brand new bag.
Hopefully you can hear that this song has the same delayed backbeat that is the heart of the Southern soul sound. You can hear the saxophone playing that low whomp on the end of the second beat, not as strong on the fourth beat. I wanted to tell you about another song by James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. Just listen to a little bit of this. This is another song that became the heart, a focal point of the civil rights movement. Not only was it a song, but it also became a catchphrase for the era.
Japan, sir. Say it loud. Say it loud. Say it loud. Say it loud. Some people say we got a lot of malice, some say it's a lot of nerve. But I say we won't quit moving till we get what we deserve. I worked hard on the job with my feet and with my hands. But all the work I did was by the other man.
And then he continues with Say It Loud, and the crowd would roar back, I'm black and I'm proud. Well, we have many other artists that showed a lot of personal integrity with regard to creating songs that spoke to some of the issues of the civil rights movement. James Brown was one of them, but you're going to talk about Sam Cooke and Marvin Gaye. Sam Cooke was also not a Motown artist. Marvin Gaye was, but he was known as the King of Soul. He was born in 1931, lived to 1964, and in his 8 short years, he had 29 singles that charted in the top 40. Now you're going to find out more about him as you do the assignment, and I'll leave that to you.